Hello and welcome to another edition of Fide's podcast. My name is Jerry Serino and I'm your host, and I'm here with talent on loan from Rush. We historically have seen images of Auschwitz and places like that have been absolutely horrific and unimaginable to see and know even about their existence. Unfortunately, we have death camps today, and those come in the form of abortion facilities. And it took an army, it took a war essentially to close down the death camps in Nazi Germany. It is also unfortunately taking a war, but a battle of a different type, a battle in which, in this case, is being waged in part by a woman instead of a male soldier over in Europe. So my guest today is Missy Martinez Stone, and she is the CEO of Reprotection, and she is shutting down abortion facilities. Missy, thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, I'm great to be here, Jerry. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. And you have really a great organization. So Reprotection, if you go to the website, it's reprotection.org. And I'm actually
Mhm.
going to put it and scroll it at the bottom of the screen. If you're watching, it's the front page of your website says shutting down abortion facilities. And we'll talk about that and how you do it.
Yeah.
But I first want to get into you and learn a little bit about yourself and how. Tell me about your background. Tell me how ultimately you got into the pro-life movement, and specifically starting Reprotection.
Yeah. So I have been doing pro life work for almost 20 years. I know I don't look old enough to be doing that, but I started when I was young. My family moved to the Washington, D.C. metro area,
Mhm.
and we attended the March for Life. I was taken there by some friends who were pro life, and they said, "Hey, we're going to go to this march. Do you want to come?" And I didn't really understand what abortion was. I didn't
Mhm.
grow up hearing this term. I was very uneducated, and thankfully, I had people in my life that began to talk to me about abortion, about the injustice of abortion, and took me to the March for Life. And I had this really special moment of walking down Constitutional Avenue, and we're walking towards the Supreme Court, and there's 600,000 people there, and just really realizing this matters. This is a big
Mhm.
deal. Over 1 million children were being killed a year at that point, and women were being harmed, and this innocent child was dying. And it just resonated so deeply with me, the magnitude of this injustice. And I just remember thinking, this is this is going to really matter. This is going to really matter to
Yeah.
me. And so kind of from that moment, I was probably 14 or 15 at that point, and just set it as my life's goal. I said, I think I'm going to grow up and do something that's going to directly impact the abortion industry. I want to end abortion in our nation, and just kind of decided from there. And so I got a degree in political science with the intention of moving to the DC area. And at that point, I mean, this was the early 2000s. There were pro-life organizations, but it's not what we have today. I mean,
Mhm.
um, there wasn't a clear path, like this is what you do to do pro-life work. And so I just moved back to the DC area and started putting feelers out. And I was like, I want to do pro-life work full time. What does that look like? And based on some of my relationships from that time, I started working at Students for Life of America in 2013, and was there for 6 years. And then it's kind of all been, it's what I've always done now in my entire adult career. So just started really resonated with me from a young age and never left.
Yes, that's such a great story, and I think it's inspiring to people that you can actually make a career, in a sense, out of doing pro-life work if that's what
Right,
you want
right.
to
That
do.
wasn't even really on people's radars, really. I didn't
Mhm.
even know that was an option until I started looking, like, you can dedicate your life to this work. And so it was really exciting when I got that opportunity.
Well, my little podcast here, I've been able to meet so many people who are doing essentially similar work to you, whether it's full time or part time. I've had so many people from Students for Life on.
Mhm.
A mutual friend, Allison Centofonte,
Yeah, yeah, she's a
is
board member now, yeah.
yeah, she
Yeah,
does, great work, and all these people are extremely educated. They could be
yes.
honestly, they could be making massive, massive money
Yeah,
working in
no
the private sector. I
yeah,
mean,
I know.
really.
I know, I know. I laugh about it. I'm like, "Man, if I just made a lateral move into the corporate world, this would be so much easier," but no, I'm committed now.
Yeah, and it's so important. It really is, and it's really great work you're doing. Okay, so tell us about Reprotection and when you started that, and tell us about what you do.
Yeah, so the idea of reprotection the started brewing about 4 years ago when national pro-life leaders identified that even though states were passing really good pro-life laws, were regulating abortion facilities uh, out of necessity because they were trying to operate dangerous facilities. These states were trying to regulate them, but there was a gap between the laws that were being passed and then the actual enforcement of them. And so when you looked at a state, it started in Indiana. So a state like Indiana had very robust abortion regulations and had pro-life legislators, a pro-life governor, ensuring that women in their community were safe from dangerous abortionists. But when you actually looked at how that was being implemented on the ground level, uh, the health department, the medical board, the agencies responsible were turning a blind eye. And part of that was they didn't know what
Mhm.
was going on. They weren't keeping accurate records. But then also, there was a hesitancy to regulate the abortion business because it's so controversial. Even if you have a pro life governor that appoints a pro life secretary of the health department does not mean that the person actually sitting at the health department is pro-life. And so when they're looking at these abortion regulations, if they didn't agree with that, they would either ignore it altogether or interpret it as loosely as possible in favor of the
Mhm.
abortion industry. So essentially, you had regulations on the books, and then all these abortion facilities being unregulated because of that gap. And so the idea of reprotection was born to step in and fill that gap and say what laws are on the books and what violations are taking place, who is responsible for that, and how can we hold these facilities accountable. So like you showed on our website, so we come alongside the pro-life advocates in their communities. We collect the information because they see and hear just horrific stories from
Mhm.
these women that are going in these facilities, and they've never had a safe, confidential, trauma-informed place to take that information and make sure it's acted on appropriately. So we provide that service to them. We say, "Oh, you heard this in your community, bring it to us. We will investigate it." We analyze the information that's been given to us. We say, "Okay, what violation occurred? What law is actually on the books? Who is the responsible agency? What are the penalties?" And then we follow that protocol to hold these facilities accountable. And ultimately, we want to shut them down based on their own misdeeds.
Mhm.
And so that was done successfully in Indiana. And then we said, okay, can we create a template and do this everywhere else? And we did incorporate in January of 2020, which was wild because then the world shut down. So our first real year in operation was 2022. And so we
Mhm.
came on the scene in January of 2022 and just absolutely exploded. People from all over the country just bombarded us with horrific stories about their abortion facilities and the things going on. And we opened over 50 investigations. We closed 2 abortion facilities. We stopped 3 from opening. And we're on the verge of closing a few more now. So it's really stepping in to say, what laws is the state put on the
Mhm.
books, and how is the abortion facility breaking those, and getting that into the right hands and making sure they're being held accountable.
Yeah. It actually reminds me of the, Kermit Gosnell
Yes,
case where they were purposely ignoring the
yes.
horrible situation there. I mean, what's funny, Missy, is that we're talking about like what we're, you're trying to find violations of in the health code, and that's what, any medical facility has to be up to code and doing
Yeah,
certain things. And
right.
even if they were up to code, up to the law, they're still killing people in these
Yeah,
places. That's the sad thing, is that you have to find they can be closed down because they're not properly sanitizing or sterilizing
yeah.
tools, but it's okay if they're ripping babies apart.
There's a who was Al Capone, maybe, there was a mafia, leader boss who was eventually got on tax fraud.
Hmm.
Like, it's kind
Yeah.
of one of those things. It's
Yeah.
like, okay, if we can't get them on these other things, we
Yeah.
know that they're violating sanitation laws, informed
Yeah.
consent laws, building codes, then let's get them on that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's just a strategic way that
Yep.
if the state is not going to make it illegal to do abortions, then we're going to find other ways to get them.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and that's what you have to do until we can legally get rid of them, and we're inching,
Right.
I guess, inching there, sort
Yeah.
of, I guess, down there. In your point about the governors, we have. I'm here in Ohio, and we have a Republican pro-life governor. We have a supermajority in the state legislature. Yet during COVID, we had a very, very. It sounds like you maybe know, liberal pro-abortion Secretary of Health and Human Services in
Mhm.
Ohio, and she
Yeah.
kept open, and it took court orders to get them to
Yeah.
shut down abortion facilities during COVID.
Right. Right.
Right, my kids were at home sleeping till 2 in the afternoon, me
But
doing
you could get
homework
an
with
abortion.
them, but you can
Yeah.
get an abortion. So,
Yeah.
do they not care about women?
Yeah.
I
I
thought they
I
did.
see it very much as misplaced compassion and misinformation. I think people were genuinely afraid that if women did not have access to abortion, that, all of these terrible things would happen. And that just comes down to, the abortion industry has done a really, really good job at misinforming people on how traumatic abortion is. If abortion is not available, these pregnancy centers are available to actually come alongside these families, offer them the real
Mhm.
help. It's just misinformation, and people are scared. And so I don't want to assume that they have malicious intent. Some of them do,
Mhm.
but a lot of it is the abortion industry has just done a really good job at marketing misinformation to scare people into believing that if we don't have access to abortion, that women are going to die. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, with my job, I see the opposite. I see when women have access to abortion, they're endangered by these physicians who should not be practicing, who have had multiple medical malpractice cases against them, who need to have their licenses suspended, who aren't uh, reporting abuse on children. Like, those are the real predators. Those are the
Yeah.
people that are actually putting women in harm's way.
So you did just give some sort of examples of things that you guys have found. Can you give, you don't have to name the location or any of that, of some of the more egregious
Yeah.
issues that you found?
Yeah, so what we have found is that because there's a lack of willingness of agencies to step in and regulate abortion, physicians and different medical practitioners can kind of hide there that probably wouldn't be able to practice any other type of medicine.
Mm,
If they were trying to do spinal surgery or anything else, there would be more regulations. But because it's
yeah.
abortion, and people are so hesitant to step in and regulate it, they can kind of build a business there and remain untouchable. So a lot of the physicians that we are investigating are typically ones that are showing signs of impairment due to age. So people that are well past their prime, maybe in their upper 80s, that are still trying to do surgical abortions with hands that are shaking, with diminished communication skills, the inability to insert a needle because of their impairment, trying to do surgery. And so that therefore you have higher risks of lacerations, of
Hmm.
hemorrhaging, of really harming these women. We had other cases where a physician had no training in OBGYN care, had no surgical training. He was a family medicine doctor, and he was providing late-term surgical abortions, and sent 3 women to the hospital almost dead. And so the fact that they did not die is an absolute miracle, because when they showed up at the hospital, they had no pulse. They had lost so much blood.
Wow.
But it's physicians who are showing signs of impairment, who have history of medical malpractice, of disciplinary actions on their licenses, who don't have the proper training, that hide in this industry and put women at risk. And so we step in and bring that to the attention of the medical boards.
Yeah. So I'd be interested in your thoughts on this. So my son, who's 20 years old, and I don't know, he may or may not be listening, but he knows everything.
Yeah,
But
right.
no, smart kid, very smart kid. So what he tells me, and he says that he thinks that this stuff, whether it's abortion, whether it's the craziness that they're doing with the transgenders and chemical castrations and hormone blockers and whatever these things are, that eventually they're going to sort of collapse on themselves, right? People are going to see the truth behind the destruction
Yeah.
with the whole transgender, and it's going to, in essence, backfire on the people that support all this, because it's
Mhm.
going to become apparent. I disagree with him. I wish he was right in this
Yeah.
case, because I look at the example of abortion and I see that the science has become more and more clear. We have ultrasound.
Yeah.
We know that the baby has its own DNA at conception. We have so many examples like what you're talking about, and yet the left wants to push it even more, and has
Right.
even pushed to kill babies after they're
Right.
born.
Right. Right.
Is there any backing down? Do you think that they are ever going to say, "Yikes, this
Mhm.
is pretty bad. Maybe we
Yeah.
need to curtail it"?
Yeah, the only thing that I have found encouraging over the past, decade, is that there has been a trend that most people in the United States do not agree with the most uh, extreme abortion views. Most people want some restrictions.
Mhm,
Most people want regulations, like the Democratic platform that says abortion in all cases for whatever reason and taxpayer funded. The majority of citizens in the United States do not agree with that. And so I
mhm,
do think that there has been a trend, thanks to things like science with ultrasounds and information and resources for women, that has changed that narrative. But we have to stay diligent, because the abortion industry is powerful, has a lot of money, and they're going to keep pushing that agenda. And so we have to step in, and advocate for these women, advocate for these communities that are targeted by Planned Parenthood, by these abortion businesses, and keep fighting back. I don't think, if I don't think they're going to collapse on themselves. I mean,
mhm,
they have too much money, they have too much power, and they have an agenda that really, um, preys on the weak and the vulnerable. I mean, it's really, really sad. So we're not until every abortion business is shut down in the United States. We're
mhm.
going to have a job to do.
Do you think that the insistence on the pro-life groups, movement, voters impacted the recent midterm elections? So I'm a Trump supporter, but he made the point of saying that he thinks it was the pro-lifers who insisted on no exceptions and stuff like that. And I disagree with him, but I'm asking you,
Yeah,
if
it's
you want to
really
give your
hard to
opinion.
say. I mean, it's so hard to say, because there were so many things at play
Hmm.
in the
Yeah.
midterms. There were so many things.
Yeah.
Maybe it definitely could have been a piece, that I think it had more to do with, because of the reversal of Roe versus Wade, the Dobbs decision. I think the abortion activists were more motivated. I think they
Mhm.
saw the writing on the wall and said, "Oh no, we just had a huge loss." And so I think there was just more, motivation. I think more people came out to vote
Mhm.
because they just suffered this huge loss. So it might have been a part of it, but because there were so many, different things going on, it's really hard to say if it was abortion or not. It might have been a piece, but I
Yeah.
think it's because the abortion industry was scared. The
Mhm.
loss of Roe versus Wade was a huge blow to their industry.
Yeah.
And so they went out and spent a lot of money in states, a lot of marketing, a lot of campaigning, to push back.
Well, yeah, I agree with you. I think that, yeah, you perfectly stated. I just am still trying to figure out my friends to the east of me here in Ohio of how in the world they voted for Fetterman. I mean, that was
Mhm.
I'm still baffled. I'm
Yeah.
absolutely still baffled at that. But nevertheless, that's what they think of
Mhm.
the institution of government, that they would
Yeah.
put someone in like that. Even before he had his apparent stroke, he was not any better, to be
Yeah.
honest. But all right, that's a separate issue. All right, so all
We're
right,
a 501(c)(3), so we don't,
yes. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, 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 yes.
we
Thank
don't
you.
take a stance on that kind of stuff.
Yes, thank you. Well, that was my opinion. So
Okay.
just as a disclaimer, that was all my opinion, not Missy's. Okay, so obviously, you do great work and you need support. Even
Yeah.
you're growing like crazy, and because
Yes.
you have a need. So tell everybody where and how they can connect, support
Mhm.
financially, in person, or if they have a facility to report.
Mhm. Yeah, so you can find everything at reprotection.org, but you hit the nail on the head. We grew so quickly. When I can fully admit I dreamt too small. Last January when I was standing at the March for Life, we had uh we had just gotten to the point where we had 4 employees. We had 2 employees up until that point. And now we have 6, and we have quadrupled our budget, but we're still barely holding on because of the amount of cases that are just flooding in.
Mhm,
We have to grow our team to meet the need because this is a national problem.
mhm,
There are so many abortion facilities that are violating basic state laws, basic state code that nobody's investigating, and the pregnancy centers want our help. The people on the ground want our help, and we want to be able to answer those calls. And so we need to grow our team. We need more investigators. So reprotection.org, you can find out more about our strategy, about how we come alongside pro-lifers in communities, how we investigate. We keep things confidential. We are trauma informed. We put the client's experience first. This is a safe
mhm,
place. We're not going to ask
mhm,
these women to do anything they don't want to do. But we want to be able to take all of those calls. And so if this is resonating with you, if you say this sounds so fascinating, we would love for you to partner with us. You can donate right on our website, reprotection.org. There's a big orange donate
yep,
button. That is the biggest need. Is I need more investigators to take
mhm,
on more cases to shut down more abortion facilities, because this is time consuming. These investigations take a lot of work. They take a lot of work, a lot of hours. And so that is our number one need is financial support. So if this sounds amazing to you, if you're like, yes, I want to come alongside what you're doing,
mhm,
that is the number one way you can support us. We also have a page where you can actually report a violation. So if you are somebody who has had a negative abortion experience yourself, or you have been, you've talked to patients who had, you can go on our website. It says report a violation, and there's a form right there that goes
mhm,
directly to our director of investigations. And she reads every single case. Now, I can't guarantee you that every single one we can do something with, but we do our best. We do our best, and we want to
yeah,
make sure that we at least give you the chance. We investigate it. We'll look into it and see what's going on at the facility in your community. So reprotection.org. Everything should be there. We also try to do once a month. We'll do a webinar called Reprotection in Brief. We'll have information up on that probably end of January after the March. We'll do one. And that just gives an opportunity for us to talk to people all over the country. They join, we talk about what we do, and it gives a chance for them to ask questions about their specific facilities. And we're happy to engage that way too. So reprotection.org, would love for you guys to check it out and become a partner.
Absolutely. Again, for those that are watching and not just listening, it's I have it on the screen. I have the website. I have the website scrolling at the bottom of the screen as well. But again, reprotection.org. And yeah, definitely help. Is there, so anyone could give money? Do you need
Anyone
a
can give money.
special,
Yeah.
yeah, do you need a special credential, or is credential that would help as far as in being someone that investigates?
So I kind of jokingly say calling all pro-life introverts. The people who help us investigate are the ones like this is me. I'm not a protester. I don't want to be out holding signs and yelling. It's just not me. It's not me. And that there's some people who do it. The people who do sidewalk counseling, bless you. You do great work. I would be so bad at it. But you tell me, please go find this one needle in a haystack sentence in legal code. I'm like, yes, that sounds amazing. And so the people that are research uh, motivated, that love to read, that love anything constitutional law, stuff like that. It's really just um, uh, are you someone that wants to be behind the scenes and digging through information? Like when I go and speak to groups of people, I can always tell who this resonates with, because there's people that their eyes just glaze over and they're like, no, thank you. And then there's other people that come up and they're like, I didn't know that I could use those gifts. Like I've always felt, like I didn't want to do the protest, but I would love to read, 200
Yeah.
pages of court testimony. That sounds fascinating.
Yeah, right, right.
So there's always like people that when I say this is what we do, it just resonates with, but it's typically the people who, are more drawn to like the liberal arts degrees, the English people, the political science, the, research kind of heavy paralegal work, I would say.
Yeah, so well, that's good to know. No, that's really good to know that, and I think that's the case for all of us in this movement, is that we all have a different role. We don't all
Yes.
have to do the exact same thing. Because
Yes.
I haven't ever done a sidewalk event either, and I admit, same with you, it wouldn't be
Yeah, I
as
wouldn't be good
comfortable.
at it. And that's
Yeah,
okay. That's fine.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So, wow, this really, really great stuff. Great story. I love it.
Thanks.
And I admit I've been trying to figure out your age, but I haven't been able to. You didn't give me any clues that would tell me about what.
33.
Oh,
33.
you didn't have to. I wasn't
That's
asking you.
fine. No, it's totally fine. Yeah. So
No,
I started when I was like 14 or 15. Went full-time work when I was 22, I guess. So, yeah,
great
been a
stuff.
while. Yeah.
Great stuff. Missy Martinez Stone, CEO of Reprotection. Thank you so much for what you do, and thanks for coming on my show.
Yeah,
I
of
appreciate it.
course. Thanks, Jerry.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. And thank all of you for listening to this episode of Fide's Podcast. Please check out all my podcasts and all the different podcast apps on Rumble and on Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern on rightamericamedia.com. So thank you again for listening, and we'll see you next time.